You have suspected it in quiet hours. There is something in you that does not dim when the world demands compliance. I call it a rare feminine light. It is not charm, nor cleverness, nor skill. It is the radiance of a soul that has obeyed the self more than the noise of the crowd. When this light appears, it does not merely change your mood, it reorders the field around you. Lovers confess what they swore to hide, children calm, enemies hesitate, doors open that were never visible. I will not name the 6 signs yet. I want you first to understand why, if you carry them, you must recognize them and guard them as sacred. If you do not learn to see this light, the world will spend it for you. You will call your exhaustion love, your vigilance kindness, your loneliness strength. You will continue to heal what refuses to be whole, and the years will pass with the same pattern and a different face. What is unlived in you will harden into fate. The 6 signs are not ornaments, they are instructions. Ignore them, and you will be praised for what slowly kills you. Honor them, and your life will begin to align with its inward law. You may doubt yourself. Why should I believe that such a light exists in me? Because every woman who has turned toward the unconscious and listened without flattery has met it. Myth names it by many figures: maiden, queen, priestess, wise woman, but these are garments for the same luminosity. This is not wishful thinking, it is psychic law. Where the self awakens, a woman's presence acquires consequence. Her words weigh more than opinion, they carry necessity. Consider the risk of remaining as you are. If you continue without recognizing these signs, your gifts will be assigned to others. A partner will absorb your foresight and call it his intuition. A rival will borrow your restraint and present it as virtue. Your family will depend upon your unspoken labor and forget that it is costly. The world will admire your composure while your dreams wither. This is the fate of unclaimed light. It serves but without meaning. Do not be deceived by the argument of time. Perhaps later I will attend to myself. Later becomes a decade. Delay turns radiance into resentment. The same bond, the same apology, the same secret fear again and again. Recognition is faster than repair. The moment you see these signs in their true form, the pattern begins to loosen. The dream clarifies, the body speaks plainly, the boundary rises like a wall that was waiting for your consent. You may ask, must this require terrible effort? No. Strain belongs to the persona that must always prove itself. Your light does not need performance, it requires obedience. The 6 signs do not ask you to become someone else, but to stop betraying who you are. This is the ease I promise. When you align with what is already true, you no longer push the river. You let it carry you where you were bound to go. Look through the eyes of those around you, and you will grasp the hidden status of this light. A lover senses that he must rise to meet you. Flattery no longer works. A child watches you choose truth over pleasing and learns what dignity means. A colleague measures their words. A rival abandons small cruelties. Even your ancestors seem to breathe more easily through you, as if an old debt were finally paid. Your very presence becomes a quiet judgment against everything that is false. Now place your life on a single line: past, present, future. In the past, you felt too much and were told it was weakness. In truth, it was sensitivity without shelter. In the present, you sense a pressure to dim again. In truth, it is the old fear testing the new flame. In the future, if you honor these 6 signs, you will no longer barter your soul for belonging. You will belong to yourself, and from that belonging, all rightful bonds are formed. Listen as though the self is watching. Return to these words until the image within begins to speak. When I name the 6 signs, you will recognize them instantly, not as ideals to imitate, but as truths you have lived in secret. When you see them, do not debate. Acknowledge them, bless them, and begin to live by them. This is not ambition, it is fidelity to your own light. Sinai, the unshielded heart. There are souls who are born with their hearts unarmored. From childhood they have felt the moods of others as weather upon their skin. Where another might see only gesture or word, they feel the hidden current beneath the grief unspoken, the hope unadmitted, the bitterness disguised as indifference. They are not magicians, they are transparent. Life passes through them with little resistance. This transparency is the first mark of a rare feminine light. It is not a choice, but a condition of being. To possess such openness in a time that rewards hardness is an act of quiet defiance. The world confuses numbness with strength and cynicism with wisdom. But the soul that refuses to become calloused preserves something sacred, the capacity to respond. To feel deeply is to remain in conversation with life. When a woman endures her sensitivity without shame, she bears witness to a higher order of courage, the courage to remain vulnerable in a world that celebrates invulnerability. Sensitivity, when lived consciously, becomes perception. The emotions that move through her are not merely reactions, but instruments. Just as the musician must feel vibration to produce tone, so the feminine psyche must feel to perceive truth. Her feelings are her eyes. Through them, she reads the invisible text of existence, the unspoken meanings behind words, the subtle atmosphere in a room, the tremor of authenticity or deceit in another's voice. She lives attuned to the field that others overlook. Yet this openness is perilous when unguarded. The empathic woman often suffers from an excess of participation. She cannot distinguish between her own sorrow and the sorrow that surrounds her. She becomes the vessel of collective pain. Because she feels more, she gives more until the giving becomes depletion. Then she calls her exhaustion love, her anxiety care, her silence peace. But this is not love, it is absorption. Love illumines both giver and receiver. Absorption extinguishes both. Every sensitive soul must therefore learn discernment. The unshielded heart must become wise, or it will drown in the very waters that once nourished it. Discernment does not mean withdrawal, it means form. A river is powerful not because it resists its nature, but because its banks give it direction. In the same way, feeling requires boundaries to become revelation rather than confusion. The woman who learns to contain her sensitivity without repressing it becomes like the sea, vast, deep, but self-contained. The ancients intuited this mystery in the story of Persephone. She began as Kore, the maiden of eternal spring, untouched by grief. When she was taken into the underworld, she tasted the fruit of darkness and could never again return as she was. She did not lose her innocence. She gained depth. Every woman of rare light undergoes a similar initiation. Her empathy leads her downward into pain, her own or another's, and there she learns that love without understanding is helpless. Only through descent does compassion acquire weight. Persephone's return to the upper world each spring does not erase her time below. It completes it. She becomes the bridge between life and death, surface and depth, joy and sorrow. So it is with the unshielded heart. Her gift is not to avoid darkness, but to move between realms, to carry the warmth of light into shadow and the wisdom of shadow into light. She feels everything, yet she does not perish from feeling because she has learned the rhythm of descent and return. It is a delicate balance, this capacity to feel without being possessed. Too little feeling, and one becomes a shell. Too much, and one dissolves. The feminine art is to remain porous but not penetrated, receptive but not consumed. This is not a moral instruction but a psychological necessity. The psyche, like the body, must breathe. It must take in and release, or it suffocates. The woman who carries this first sign often wonders why others call her too much. She senses the pain that politeness conceals, the hypocrisy that passes for harmony. Her heart reacts as a seismograph to every tremor in the field. She may wish to be simpler, less affected, yet simplicity bought at the cost of sensitivity is only blindness in disguise. What she must cultivate is not less feeling, but more awareness. Awareness teaches her that emotion is not an enemy, but a messenger. When she feels sudden sorrow in the presence of another, she learns to ask, "Is this mine?" When her mood changes inexplicably, she listens for the soul's commentary beneath the mind's chatter. Her heart becomes not a sponge, but an instrument, a vessel tuned to the music of the invisible. In this way, sensitivity transforms from suffering into insight. But to reach such maturity, she must pass through misunderstanding, for the collective fears feeling. It prefers those who adapt to its shallow rhythms, who call apathy peace and distraction joy. The sensitive woman threatens this arrangement simply by existing. Her presence reminds others of what they have forgotten to feel. They will call her fragile, sentimental, dramatic. But these accusations reveal their fear, not her weakness. There is a strange loneliness that accompanies this stage of development. She stands between two worlds, the outer world that worships surfaces and the inner world that speaks only in symbols. In her dreams, she may wander through dim corridors or ancient landscapes, searching for a source of light that never disappears. That light is her own feeling nature, guiding her toward integration. The more she honors it, the more clearly it guides. To feel everything is to be called to service, though not always in visible ways. Her sensitivity becomes the conscience of her environment. In her family, she perceives the tensions that others ignore. Among friends, she senses what is unspoken and offers comfort before words are formed. In her work, she brings imagination and humanity into systems that would otherwise become mechanical. She is the pulse in a body grown numb, yet she must remember that not every ache calls for healing, not every pain seeks remedy. Some sufferings must be left to teach their own lessons. The unshielded heart must learn to witness without intervening, to trust that others have their own destinies. Her task is to remain available, not to become indispensable. This distinction preserves both her energy and her humility. Gradually, she realizes that her sensitivity is the bridge between herself and the self, the deeper center that unites all opposites. Each emotion, when traced to its root, reveals a movement of that greater life within her. Joy and sorrow, love and fear are the alternating tides of the same ocean. To feel them consciously is to participate in the mystery of being. To deny them is to live on the shore, watching life's waves from a distance. The world may never fully understand this kind of strength. It will continue to praise the warrior who conquers and ignore the one who endures. But endurance of the heart is the greater victory. It transforms pain into meaning, chaos into order, and despair into compassion. The unshielded heart is not weak. It is the organ through which the self breathes into the world. And so, I tell you, the first sign of the rare feminine light is not perfection but participation. It is the willingness to remain open, to feel the ache of existence without seeking anesthesia, to allow joy and grief to coexist in the same vessel. She feels everything, yet she remains capable of love. Her sensitivity is not fragility. It is the wisdom of life itself, awakening within her. Sing tu, the eye that sees through appearances. There are few things more unsettling to the collective mind than a woman who truly sees. To see in the psychological sense is not to observe with the eyes but to perceive with the soul. It is to penetrate beyond appearance into the secret motives of existence. The second sign of the rare feminine light reveals itself through this faculty, the eye that looks through illusion, the perception that cannot be deceived by surfaces. She may not know how she knows, yet she knows. Such perception is not learned. It rises from the deep layers of the unconscious, where all opposites coexist. In her, intuition has become an organ of vision. The self speaks through sudden insight, through unaccountable certainties, through the feeling that something is off, even when reason insists it is right. This is not fantasy. It is the perception of the unseen order underlying events. When a woman's consciousness has awakened to this degree, she cannot remain at peace within falsehood. Her eyes are not distracted by ornament. They search for essence. She sees when the word love is used to conceal dependence, when kindness hides manipulation, when ambition disguises emptiness. She perceives the tension between what is said and what is meant, what is promised and what is done. For this reason, she often feels out of place in a world addicted to appearances. To live with such clarity is both gift and exile. The collective prefers blindness, for blindness preserves comfort. Those who cannot be deceived are rarely beloved. The woman who sees too much is inconvenient. She is accused of overthinking, of suspicion, of coldness. But the truth is simpler. She no longer participates in the collective dream. She has opened her inner eyes, and in that act, the veil that protects mediocrity has fallen. Her insight is not confined to human motives. It extends to the hidden life of things. She senses when a room has absorbed too much suffering, when a conversation conceals a forgotten grief, when a smile carries fatigue behind it. Even nature speaks to her differently. A sudden shift in wind, the silence of animals, the rhythm of a flame all convey meaning. The world is full of signs for those who have learned to read them, yet such seeing isolates her. Those who live from the surface will always feel judged by the one who sees through it. They interpret her perception as criticism, though it may be only awareness. Many men, confronted by such a gaze, become uneasy. They feel exposed, not because she condemns them, but because her clarity reflects the shadow they work to hide. Others, drawn by her insight, will mistake it for magic and attempt to possess it. But her sight cannot be borrowed or bought. It is born of the union between her consciousness and her depths. The danger for her lies in pride. To see through others easily can tempt her to feel superior, to identify with the power of vision rather than with the humility of the seer. When this happens, insight turns to judgment, and judgment blinds. To truly see requires love. Without love, perception becomes cruelty. It exposes without healing. It illuminates without warmth. Every insight must therefore be tempered by compassion. When she perceives deception, she must remember that blindness is the soul's defense against unbearable truth. Most people lie not from malice, but from fear. They wear masks because they have forgotten that their faces are already sufficient. If she judges too harshly, she becomes another tyrant of truth, petrifying those around her like Athena's gaze through Medusa's head. The myth of Medusa speaks deeply to this condition. Medusa's stare turned men to stone, not because she was evil, but because those who looked upon her were unprepared to face what she represented: the raw power of the unconscious feminine, unmasked and unmediated. Perseus survived only by using a mirror, symbol of reflection. So too must the woman of vision learn reflection, to see indirectly, to interpret rather than expose. In reflection, truth becomes bearable. It teaches instead of destroys. The faculty of inner vision, once awakened, must be directed inward as well as outward. Many who see clearly in others remain blind to their own illusions. The psyche compensates for every one-sidedness. If she uses her sight to diagnose others while neglecting her own darkness, she will become identified with the role of the seer and fall victim to the same blindness she despises. True vision demands self-scrutiny. When she turns this gaze inward, she discovers that her insight into others was always a mirror. Each deception she uncovers outside corresponds to some fear or compromise within. The falsehoods of the world become teachers. They point her toward the places where she still hides from herself. In this way, seeing becomes a path of individuation, guiding her toward integration rather than isolation. She learns then that vision is not possession but participation. It is not that she stands apart, seeing while others remain blind, but that she has become the instrument through which the collective unconscious observes itself. The world, seeking to know its own shadow, looks through her eyes. Her task is to remain transparent, to let the truth pass through without distortion. This requires constant purification, honesty, humility, solitude. Such clarity, when balanced, bestows quiet authority. People sense in her a presence that does not need to prove itself. They come to her for counsel, often without knowing why. Her words, though few, strike deeply. She speaks not to persuade, but to reveal. Her insight brings order where there was confusion, calm where there was hysteria. Yet she does not mistake herself for the source of condition. This wisdom, she knows it flows from the self, that center beyond personality. To live as one who sees is to live in perpetual dialogue with shadow. Every truth casts a shadow, every light creates its own darkness. The woman of rare light understands this paradox. She does not seek purity of vision at the cost of wholeness. She allows ambiguity, contradiction, and imperfection to coexist within her awareness. She knows that what appears dark today may reveal its purpose tomorrow, and that the soul's wisdom often hides behind error. In her relationships, this sign manifests as an inability to pretend. She cannot sustain bonds built upon illusion. Her friendships are few but real. Her love, though often misunderstood, is the most trustworthy, for she loves not the image of the other but their essence. To be loved by such a woman is to be seen fully one's virtues and one's flaws alike. Some find this unbearable, others find it redemptive. The world has always both feared and sought such vision. Prophets were loved for their miracles and killed for their truth. The same pattern repeats on smaller scales. The woman who sees through pretense threatens the social fabric held together by mutual deception. Her presence disturbs because it demands authenticity. Yet, every culture perishes when it banishes its seers, for without vision, no renewal is possible. In modern times, this archetype often manifests as the woman who cannot rest in roles assigned to her. She perceives their emptiness, the artificial smiles, the endless performance of harmony. She may be called distant, but in truth she is searching for meaning beyond convention. Her dissatisfaction is not rebellion, but lucidity. She sees that the life prescribed for her does not correspond to the life that calls from within. When she obeys this inner sight, she begins to shape her existence according to truth rather than imitation. Her choices seem strange to others. She may leave a comfortable relationship, abandon a prestigious career, or choose silence over applause. Yet each act restores integrity between what she knows and what she lives. Such alignment brings peace that no external approval can equal. Still, she must guard her solitude. Vision without community can turn bitter. To see humanity's blindness daily and to find few who wish to awaken is a heavy burden. The temptation to withdraw completely is strong, but if she hides her light, it withers. Her task is to remain among others without becoming of them, to walk in the marketplace with the eyes of the temple. Those who have walked this path before her, the Sibyls, the oracles, the wise women, knew that vision exacts a price. To bear the gift of sight is to live at the threshold between worlds. The rational mind cannot comprehend what she perceives. It demands proof where only resonance can exist. Thus, she learns to speak in symbols, in poetry, in silence. The language of the unconscious cannot be translated directly. It must be felt. The woman of true sight becomes a translator of the invisible. She gives form to intuition, word to instinct, image to feeling. She becomes an interpreter of dreams, not only her own but the collective's. Through her insight, what was unconscious becomes conscious. What was chaotic finds meaning. This is her service to life. When she reaches maturity in this gift, her seeing softens. The sharpness of early clarity mellows into compassion. She no longer needs to expose every falsehood. She recognizes that truth, like light, must be modulated lest it blind. She becomes a quiet presence, one who understands without explanation, who influences without control. Her wisdom now flows like water, finding its way gently into the cracks of ignorance. At last, she understands that to see is not to separate oneself from illusion, but to walk through it without being deceived. The world remains full of masks, but she no longer mistakes them for faces. She wears her own mask lightly, knowing it to be necessary for communication but not for identity. She plays her part in the outer play of life while keeping her inner gaze fixed upon the eternal. And so I say, the second sign of the rare feminine light is the eye that sees through appearances. It is the inner vision born of integrity between heart and mind, instinct and spirit. She perceives truth beneath pretense, yet her sight is tempered by mercy. She restores the world's sight not by accusation but by example. In her presence, others remember what it means to see. Sign 3, the refusal to betray the inner voice. Every soul that awakens must one day make a choice between belonging to the world and belonging to itself. Most will choose the world, for the cost of inward allegiance is solitude, and solitude is feared more than dishonesty. Yet there are a few who cannot make that compromise. They may falter, they may grieve, they may wander, but they cannot betray the voice that speaks from within. This fidelity to the inner law is the third sign of the rare feminine light. In such a woman, conscience has become something greater than morality. It is not obedience to social codes or religious rules. It is obedience to the unseen order of the self. She does not ask, is this approved, but is this true? The world may call her disobedient, stubborn, or proud, yet her defiance is only the persistence of her soul's integrity. She knows, perhaps without being able to explain how, that what is false cannot nourish her spirit, no matter how it glitters. This inner voice does not shout, it whispers. It is easily drowned by the noise of fear, by the opinions of others, by the rationalizations of the mind. But once a woman has heard it clearly, even once, she can never again pretend not to know. That single moment of recognition divides her life into before and after. Before, she lived according to expectation. After, she lives according to truth. Her path becomes narrower, yet more luminous. She may lose companions, comfort, even status, but she gains alignment with the invisible axis of being. Those around her will not always understand. Some will pity her for her unrealistic choices. Others will condemn her as rebellious or proud, yet she does not act for praise or rebellion. She acts because she cannot do otherwise. To live in this way is to bear a continual tension between inner and outer worlds. The collective values conformity, while the self demands authenticity. Every act of obedience to the inner voice is an act of disobedience to convention. The woman who obeys the self walks a lonely road. Her reward is not approval, but peace, the peace of knowing that her life corresponds to its meaning. There is a story in myth that speaks of this fidelity. Cassandra, daughter of Priam, who was granted the gift of prophecy by Apollo, but cursed never to be believed. She foresaw the destruction of Troy, warned her people, and was dismissed as mad. The tragedy of Cassandra is not only that she saw truth, but that she could not deny it even when disbelief brought her ruin. She represents the archetype of the soul compelled to speak, though the world prefers silence. Many women who carry this sign feel a similar burden. They sense what is coming emotionally, psychically, spiritually, yet their warnings fall upon deaf ears. They see the cracks forming in the structures of their relationships, their societies, even their own bodies, and they cannot remain quiet. Their voice disturbs complacency. They are told they exaggerate, that they are too sensitive, that they should learn to be flexible, but the self does not compromise. It demands expression even when the price is misunderstanding. In psychological terms, this refusal to betray the inner voice is the beginning of individuation, the process by which the personality becomes an expression of the self rather than an imitation of the collective. It is the emergence of inner authority. Until this authority awakens, a woman's choices are governed by the outer world, what is acceptable, desirable, rewarded. When the inner voice takes command, she becomes accountable to a different order. Her values shift from approval to authenticity, from success to meaning, from security to truth. This transformation does not occur without conflict. The ego fears losing control. It protests, if I follow this voice, I will lose everything. And sometimes it is right. The path of authenticity often strips away what was never real. Friendships fall away, careers dissolve, lovers depart. What remains is the core that cannot be taken. The woman who endures this stripping learns the paradox of inner obedience, that freedom comes not from doing as one pleases, but from doing as one must. She begins to see that the voice within her is not foreign, it is her own highest nature speaking. The self does not command like a tyrant. It invites, persuades, insists through intuition, dream, and feeling. It never forces, it waits. The tragedy is that so few listen. Listening to this inner guide requires stillness. In stillness, the noise of the collective subsides. The woman who carries rare light therefore cultivates solitude, not as retreat but as necessity. In solitude, she hears the subtle movements of her soul. She senses when something is inwardly right, even if outwardly absurd. She feels when a path has ended before the mind can see why. Such perception cannot be taught. It must be trusted. Trusting the inner voice is a lifelong apprenticeship. At first, the woman tests it with hesitation. She wonders if she is imagining it. She may follow it once and suffer loss, then doubt it, then return to it again, discovering that each time she obeys, her life becomes more coherent. Slowly, obedience becomes devotion. The voice proves itself by leading her to wholeness. But fidelity to the self is not serenity, it is fire. It burns away falseness relentlessly. Each time she compromises against it, the body reacts, the chest tightens, the stomach knots, the dream turns dark. The psyche does not permit long disobedience once it has tasted truth. The woman who betrays her inner knowing feels split, estranged from herself. She may succeed outwardly, but inwardly she withers. The soul cannot thrive in deceit, even self-deceit. There are times when the inner command seems cruel. It asks her to leave what she loves, to remain where she longs to flee, to speak when silence would protect her, to be silent when speech would vindicate her. Yet in each demand, there is hidden mercy. The self cares nothing for comfort, it cares for growth. Every obedience enlarges the soul's capacity for truth. To the outside world, such a woman may appear stubborn, but her stubbornness is consecrated. It is not the rigidity of pride, but the steadfastness of vision. She has seen a glimmer of what is real, and she cannot pretend blindness. Her no is sacred. It preserves the integrity of life within her. When she says no to what is false, she says yes to the deeper pattern seeking expression through her. Over time, this fidelity alters her presence. People sense in her a gravity that has nothing to do with solemnity. She speaks simply, yet her words carry weight. She may not persuade others to follow her path, but she awakens in them a memory of their own. The authenticity of one soul calls forth authenticity in others. This is how the inner voice becomes a communal blessing, by being lived, not preached. The woman who lives by this law often encounters resistance from within as well as without. The ego, fearing irrelevance, disguises itself as reason. It argues persuasively, be sensible, compromise, adapt. The voice of the self, however, is quieter and more absolute. The moment she consents, events align, coincidences appear, strength returns, the universe moves to meet the one who moves in truth. In dream symbolism, the inner voice often appears as a wise old man or woman, a child, or a figure of light. It speaks few words but leaves profound impressions. Its tone is unmistakable, neither flattering nor condemning, simply true. Those who learn to recognize this tone become less dependent on outer validation. Their compass turns inward. They no longer need prophets, priests, or lovers to tell them what they already know. To live in obedience to the self does not mean isolation from others. It means that relationships become real. When she no longer betrays herself, she ceases to demand that others lie to her. She no longer pleads for love through submission. She offers love through authenticity. Her boundaries, once porous, become luminous. Those who can meet her in truth stay. Those who cannot drift away. The filtering is natural, not forced. The Cassandra within her continues to speak, but now she speaks primarily to herself. Her warnings become wisdom, her prophecies insight. She no longer needs to be believed. She needs only to be true. What once felt like curse turns into vocation. She becomes a voice of clarity in her community, not by preaching but by living transparently. Through long obedience, she discovers that the inner voice is not static. As consciousness expands, the guidance evolves. What was once forbidden may later be required, and what was once required may later be released. The self leads not by law but by relationship. The woman learns to converse with it through dream, intuition, and symbol. Her life becomes a dialogue between her humanity and her divinity. At last, she understands that to betray the inner voice would be to betray the very meaning of existence. The world's approval cannot replace the serenity that comes from inner coherence. When her actions, words, and thoughts align with the quiet command of the self, she feels peace even in uncertainty. She has found her axis, the point around which all movement is ordered. So I tell you, the third sign of the rare feminine light is the refusal to betray the inner voice. It is the unwavering fidelity to the unseen law that guides the soul toward wholeness. Such a woman may walk alone, but she does not walk in darkness. The light she follows is within her, and wherever she moves in obedience to it, the world begins, imperceptibly, to realign around her. Sign 4, the sacred relationship with suffering. There are two ways in which the soul encounters pain, as punishment or as initiation. To those who remain bound to the ego, suffering seems arbitrary, cruel, without meaning. But to those who have begun to awaken, it becomes something else entirely, a language of transformation, a passage between worlds. The fourth sign of the rare feminine light is precisely this, the woman's sacred relationship with suffering. She does not seek it, yet when it arrives, she receives it as a teacher. It may seem strange that I call her suffering sacred, for the world worships comfort. Civilization has built its temples to avoidance, entertainment, distraction, consumption. We flee from sorrow as if it were contagion. Yet sorrow is not a disease of the soul. It is the medicine it prescribes for itself. The woman of depth comes to understand this through experience, for life does not spare her. Her heart breaks more easily, her conscience stirs more readily, her dreams speak more insistently. Each loss presses her toward awareness, until she no longer asks, "Why do I suffer?" but "What is my suffering asking of me?" In her, the alchemical law of transformation begins to operate. The soul, like nature, creates by destruction. The seed must break for the plant to emerge. The chrysalis must dissolve for the butterfly to take flight. What burns purifies, what wounds reveals. Pain is not opposed to growth, it is its instrument. Every genuine enlargement of consciousness has passed through fire. The ego resists until it can resist no longer, and then, through defeat, learns humility. The woman who carries this sign learns early that avoidance deepens pain, while acceptance transforms it. When grief comes, she does not smother it with noise or drown it in distraction. She listens. She allows it to speak. Grief has a voice if one is silent enough to hear it. It tells of the soul's longing to be whole, of love not yet lived, of potential not yet fulfilled. Through tears, the self calls her inward. This attitude is not weakness, but wisdom. To deny pain is to deny half of life. Those who insist on perpetual positivity become brittle, incapable of compassion. They live upon the surface, afraid to dive. The woman of rare light dives willingly, for she knows that truth dwells in the depths. She does not dramatize her wounds. She descends into them as into sacred ground, trusting that there she will find something of herself she has lost. Her descent often takes the form of silence. The world continues its noisy motions while she withdraws into stillness. Outwardly she appears withdrawn, even melancholic, but inwardly a great labor is taking place. The personality dissolves its old forms. The unconscious rises, demanding acknowledgement. She dreams of death, of earth, of water, images of dissolution and rebirth. These are not omens of despair, but signs of alchemical transformation. The old self is dying so that the new may emerge. In this process, she joins an ancient lineage of women whose suffering became initiation. Think of Inanna descending into the underworld. At each gate she was stripped of crown, of jewels, of garments, until she stood naked before the Queen of the Dead. There she was judged, killed, and hung upon a hook. Only after her body decayed did she return, renewed and radiant. Inanna's journey is the feminine path through pain. It is not conquest, but surrender. Not escape, but understanding. When a woman experiences deep loss of love, of child, of identity, something similar occurs. She is stripped of all she thought she was. Her beauty, her achievements, her role, none can protect her. She stands before the darkness with nothing left to defend. And in that nakedness, she discovers a presence she had never known before. The self, immense, impersonal, loving, yet severe. It does not comfort, it reveals. It says, "You are not what you thought." This revelation wounds, but it also heals. For what is wounded is illusion, and what heals is truth. Slowly she realizes that the pain was not sent to destroy her, but to free her from false attachments. Every disappointment was a doorway. Every heartbreak was a summons to authenticity. Pain is the self's method of calling the ego home. Because she has endured such descent, her compassion changes. It is no longer pity that looks down, but solidarity that looks across. She can comfort without condescension because she has known the same night. People feel safe in her presence, not because she spares them pain, but because she does not fear theirs. Her calm says, "I have been there, and it does not end there." In her, others glimpse the possibility that suffering, consciously born, can lead to grace. Yet not all suffering sanctifies. There is a kind that poisons the suffering of refusal, of resentment, of unconscious repetition. The woman of rare light learns to distinguish between the two. When she carries pain without awareness, it festers. When she holds it with consciousness, it transforms. The difference lies in attitude. Unconscious endurance leads to martyrdom. Conscious endurance leads to wisdom. The martyr says, "I suffer, therefore I am good." The wise woman says, "I suffer, therefore I must understand." Understanding reveals that pain is impersonal. It belongs to life, not to the individual. The ego says, "Why me?" The soul says, "Why? Not me?" The feminine psyche, more than the masculine, is called to bear this universal dimension of suffering. She carries not only her personal wounds, but those of her lineage, her culture, her time. The collective shadow often finds expression through her body, her dreams, her emotions. To bear it consciously is her spiritual labor. Sometimes she mistakes this burden for personal failure. She believes she is too sensitive, too easily hurt. But sensitivity is the instrument of transmutation. The unconscious chooses vessels capable of feeling deeply enough to transform pain into awareness. If she represses that sensitivity, the energy turns destructive. If she honors it, it becomes light. The heat of her suffering, endured without bitterness, becomes the gold of understanding. Those who have reached this stage develop a quiet gravity. Their presence calms without effort. They do not offer advice or consolation in words. Their being itself consoles. They have passed through darkness and found light within it, and that light shines through their eyes. They no longer divide the world into fortunate and unfortunate, success and failure. They see that everything belongs to the process by which the soul learns to love reality as it is. There is a beauty that belongs only to those who have suffered well. It is not the fragile beauty of youth, but the luminous beauty of authenticity. The lines upon their faces are not marks of decay, but hieroglyphs of revelation. Each wrinkle records an encounter between the ego and the self, between illusion and truth. Their gaze carries the authority of one who has wrestled with angels and survived. The danger, however, remains: to confuse compassion with self-neglect, to transform conscious suffering into unconscious servitude. Many women who carry this sign risk becoming vessels for the pain of others without limit. They heal, but they forget to rest. They listen, but they cease to speak. Their light dims under the weight of what was never theirs to bear. Suffering must be shared, not stolen. The art lies in participation without identification. To suffer consciously does not mean to invite pain, but to accept its necessity when it arrives. It means to ask, what wants to be born through this, rather than, when will it end? The self uses pain to dismantle what the ego will not release voluntarily. Each heartbreak widens the aperture of consciousness, allowing more of the divine to enter. The woman who understands this ceases to view suffering as misfortune. She recognizes it as sacred labor, as the work by which life makes itself known through her. In dreams, this process often appears as images of burning, of melting, of transformation through heat. Fire consumes but also refines. The alchemists knew this when they spoke of the nigredo, the blackening phase that precedes the whitening. The soul must pass through putrefaction before illumination. In psychological terms, this means the death of old attitudes, the surrender of control, the acceptance of limitation. What emerges is humility, the foundation of all wisdom. At last she reaches a state in which she no longer fears suffering, for she has seen what it conceals. Pain has become a doorway to the sacred. When it visits, she greets it as an old companion. She knows it will not stay forever. It comes to instruct and departs when the lesson is learned. In its absence, she feels gratitude, not relief. Gratitude that she has lived, that she has felt, that she has been transformed once more. Thus, the fourth sign of the rare feminine light is not endurance but understanding. It is the capacity to enter suffering consciously, to find in it the seeds of meaning, and to emerge with greater compassion. She does not glorify pain, but neither does she curse it. She knows that the soul's path winds through both joy and sorrow, and that to refuse either is to remain incomplete. Through her, others learn a new attitude toward their own suffering. They see that pain need not end in bitterness, that grief can deepen love, that failure can awaken humility. Her example restores dignity to human vulnerability. She stands as living proof that suffering, when sanctified by awareness, is not destruction but initiation, the crucible through which the feminine light becomes indestructible. Sign V, the tension between solitude and service. Every life that deepens eventually discovers a paradox. The more inwardly one turns towards silence, the more the outer world calls for one's presence. Those who live near the center of the soul become, without design, a source of healing for others. They do not seek this role, it comes to them naturally. Yet if they respond too quickly, they lose the very stillness that nourishes their gift. This tension between solitude and service marks the fifth sign of the rare feminine light. To dwell too long among others is to risk dispersion. To remain too long in solitude is to risk sterility. The woman who carries the rare light must learn the rhythm between the two, the breathing of the soul, inhalation as retreat, exhalation as offering. If she forgets this rhythm, she begins to wither. Her compassion turns into exhaustion, her giving into resentment. But when she obeys it, her life unfolds with quiet harmony. The feminine psyche, by its nature, stands between worlds. It mediates between the unconscious and the conscious, the personal and the collective, the temporal and the eternal. This mediating role demands both withdrawal and participation. In solitude, she descends into the depths of her inner landscape, where symbols, dreams, and intuitions gather like mist. In service, she brings the harvest of that inner world to nourish others. One movement without the other is incomplete. Modern culture fears solitude. It confuses stillness with idleness, retreat with weakness. Yet solitude is the womb of the soul. All true creation, be it art, love, or wisdom, gestates in silence before it is born into form. The woman of rare light understands this instinctively, even if she has been taught to feel guilty for it. When she withdraws from the noise of life, it is not because she despises humanity, but because she must renew her connection to the eternal. Her solitude is not escape, it is service of another kind. She listens inwardly to the voice that speaks beneath all voices, the whisper of the self. There she receives instruction not from books or opinions, but from direct communion with the unconscious. In that space of aloneness, she meets her dreams, those nightly messengers carrying the language of the soul. She learns to interpret them, to live by them. Solitude becomes her sanctuary, her sacred hearth. But the world will not leave her alone. The same sensitivity that allows her to commune with the unseen draws others toward her. People feel safe in her presence. They come to her with their confessions, their doubts, their untold griefs. She listens not as a role, but as a natural expression of her being. She becomes, without effort, a vessel through which others sense their own depth. Here lies the danger, to give without replenishing. The fire that warms the world must be tended, or it dies. The woman who forgets this burns out, her once luminous energy turning pale. She becomes irritable, fatigued, numb. She may even begin to despise the very people she longed to serve. The unconscious then demands a withdrawal through illness, depression, or loss. These experiences are not punishment, but correction. They remind her that she has mistaken endless availability for love. True service arises not from guilt or duty, but from overflow. When the cup is full, it must pour. When it is empty, it must rest. The feminine mystery teaches this through the image of the priestess tending the sacred flame. After each ritual, she returns to the inner temple to restore herself. Her solitude is not selfishness, it is maintenance of the fire. Without it, her offering loses sanctity and becomes performance. Many women struggle against this rhythm because they fear being called selfish. The collective, which thrives on unconscious sacrifice, praises the one who gives until she collapses. But unconscious giving serves no one. It produces dependency in others and depletion in the giver. Only consciousness dignifies generosity. When a woman learns to say no without guilt, she restores equilibrium to herself and to those who depend on her. In solitude, she also confronts the hidden motives behind her service. She asks, do I give to be loved, to feel useful, to avoid my own emptiness? These questions purify her intention. Gradually, her service becomes impersonal, not cold, but free from the compulsion to rescue. She learns that each soul must bear its own burden, and that to carry another's pain without their readiness is to violate their process. Compassion must be guided by respect for destiny. When her giving springs from fullness, not fear, it has a different quality. It does not seek reward, it brings order. Her presence becomes a quiet influence. She does not impose change. Change occurs in her atmosphere, as if the psyche around her adjusts itself to her equilibrium. Her work, whatever form it takes, becomes sacred because it is an extension of her inner alignment. The myth of Hestia, the Greek goddess of the hearth, expresses this balance. Hestia never left her sanctuary, yet her flame burned in every household. She was both solitary and central. Through her stillness, the world was warmed. Likewise, the woman of rare light may seem withdrawn, but her influence radiates through her being. Her silence becomes nourishment for others. However, the rhythm between solitude and service is never static. It changes with the seasons of her soul. There are times when she must retreat deeply, when outer work ceases and inner work begins. Dreams intensify, moods shift. The unconscious demands attention. If she resists, her body will protest through fatigue or illness. The psyche uses the body to enforce what consciousness neglects. When she obeys and withdraws, energy returns, insight flowers, creativity awakens anew. Upon returning to the world, she carries a new quality of presence. She moves more slowly, speaks more thoughtfully, listens more completely. Her actions, though fewer, have greater effect. This is the paradox of true service. The less one strives, the more one accomplishes. The power lies not in effort, but in alignment with the inner rhythm. It must be understood that solitude does not necessarily mean isolation. Even in the midst of people, she can remain inwardly still. Her solitude is a state of awareness, not a location. She can be among the crowd, yet untouched by its agitation, because her roots reach deep into the unseen. She draws from a source that does not depend on circumstance. The world senses this independence and alternately reveres and resents it. Those who live from dependency feel unsettled by her self-sufficiency. They mistake her peace for indifference, her silence for judgment. Yet she judges no one. She simply abides in her own center. Her existence challenges others to find theirs. This is her quiet form of leadership, leading not by persuasion but by example. At times, she may feel torn between two loves, her love for humanity and her love for solitude. She wonders if she must choose, but these are not opposites. They are phases of the same movement. Solitude gives depth to her compassion. Compassion gives purpose to her solitude. When she honors both, she becomes whole. In this balance, she begins to embody the archetype of the wise woman, the one who knows when to speak and when to remain silent, when to give and when to withdraw. Her life resembles the phases of the moon, now hidden, now revealed, yet always in orbit around the same unseen center. To the unconscious, she becomes a symbol of the eternal rhythm of life itself. In dreams, this sign may appear as images of water that fills and empties, or as a flame that flickers yet never dies. Such symbols remind her that her power lies not in constancy of activity, but in constancy of being. The rare feminine light is not a torch held high. It is a hearth fire tended patiently, protected from the winds of excess. She must remember that solitude is not an end in itself, but a means of communion with the self. It is there that she receives the guidance that determines her service. To neglect this inner relationship is to lose direction. The world will then seize her energy for its own purposes, draining her sacred power into unconscious causes. But when she listens inwardly, her service aligns with necessity. Her actions become timely, her words precise, her efforts fruitful. Gradually, she learns that service, at its purest, is not doing but being. Her presence becomes the offering. Whether she is speaking or silent, working or resting, her alignment with the self radiates order into chaos. People leave her presence changed, though they cannot say why. The transformation occurs not through effort, but through resonance. Thus, the fifth sign of the rare feminine light is mastery of rhythm, the ability to move between solitude and service, inner and outer, rest and expression. She neither clings to stillness nor fears it, neither clings to work nor glorifies it. She lives in dialogue with life, responding rather than reacting. Her days unfold as a sacred alternation between receiving and giving, inhaling and exhaling, silence and song. When this balance is achieved, her energy becomes inexhaustible because it no longer belongs to her. She draws from the same source that sustains the stars, the source that never diminishes because it is shared by all. To serve from this place is not burden but joy. To withdraw into silence is not loneliness, but communion. In her, opposites find harmony, and through her, the world remembers what true service means, not sacrifice, but sanctity. Sign VI, the radiance that awakens others. There is a moment in every soul's journey when effort dissolves into presence. The long labor of self-knowledge, the endless dialogue between shadow and light, the rhythm between solitude and service, all these prepare the ground for a single realization that what she once sought to become, the self-beings she already is. The sixth and final sign of the rare feminine light arises when consciousness aligns so fully with the self that her very being becomes revelation. This is radiance, not brilliance, not performance, but the quiet luminosity of authenticity. At first, such radiance is difficult even for her to recognize. It does not announce itself with fanfare or display. It moves like dawn, soft, inevitable, transforming the world without noise. Others perceive it before she does. They speak to her differently, pause in her presence, confess what they had long concealed. Strangers sense that here is a person who listens beyond words. They do not know why, but they trust her. They feel in her company the stirring of their own forgotten depths. This radiance is not charm, for charm manipulates. It is not beauty, for beauty fades. It is the emanation of a psyche that has become whole. The opposites within her, strength and tenderness, knowledge and mystery, passion and restraint, no longer wage war. They converse. In her presence, one feels harmony without perfection, peace without stagnation. She has accepted her contradictions, and thus she no longer demands that others hide theirs. The world feels this as liberation. People who come near her begin to breathe more easily. Their masks grow heavy. Their pretenses seem unnecessary. Her gaze does not accuse, yet it exposes falsehood. Her silence does not judge, yet it calls forth truth. This is why I say her presence awakens others. She does not teach by instruction, but by vibration. As music awakens the dormant ear, few understand how costly such radiance has been. It is not inherited, but earned through years of inner labor, through wounds endured consciously, through losses accepted without bitterness. Each descent into darkness refined her light. Each act of truth, spoken when silence was safer, increased its clarity. By obeying the self, she has become transparent to it. The light that shines through her is not hers, it is the world's own soul, reflected in a vessel that no longer resists. To radiate in this way is to live in paradox. She is visible yet hidden, powerful yet humble. Some approach her with reverence, drawn by what they cannot name. Others recoil, unable to bear the clarity she embodies. Her presence polarizes, for consciousness always divides before it unites. Those who are ready to awaken feel strengthened. Those who cling to illusion feel exposed. This is not her doing, but the natural reaction of souls confronted by truth. The radiance of the mature feminine resembles the fire of Hestia's hearth, steady, warm, and central. It does not seek attention, but sustains life quietly. She no longer needs to assert her worth, for her being affirms it. She no longer strives to be seen, for she has learned to see. Her joy is inward, not dependent on applause. Her peace is the peace of alignment, the serenity of one who serves the eternal through the particular. Yet even this radiance must remain guarded by humility. To believe oneself the source of the light is to lose it. The ego, ever opportunistic, tries to appropriate the glow of the self. It whispers, "I am special, enlightened, superior." But true radiance excludes pride as fire excludes shadow. The moment she imagines herself extraordinary, her light dims into self-consciousness. The vessel must remain clear, not exalted. She protects this humility by remembering the path that shaped her. Each scar is a reminder that she is human. Each failure keeps her heart tender. The radiance is not an escape from imperfection, but its transfiguration. She does not deny her flaws, she forgives them. The mature light of the feminine includes everything that was once rejected: the child, the lover, the fool, the sinner. Her wholeness lies in integration, not idealization. This light does not seek disciples or followers. It calls forth equals. Those who meet her awaken to their own capacity for depth. Her radiance is contagious in the purest sense. It quickens the sleeping self in others. She becomes, without intention, a midwife of consciousness. In families, in friendships, in the quiet exchanges of daily life, she serves as catalyst. Through her, the unconscious of the collective glimpses its next stage of evolution. This influence, though often unnoticed by her, can be immense. In a world that values noise, her silence has weight. Her calm steadies the unbalanced. Her laughter releases the tense. Even her absence is felt when she withdraws. The atmosphere cools. Such is the power of a soul that lives in harmony with itself. The psyche of others recognizes this order instinctively as the tides respond to the moon. But with this influence comes solitude of another kind. Her radiance, though gentle, can make intimacy difficult. Few can stand long before unfiltered truth. The ones who do remain are those willing to see themselves. The rest retreat into projection, idolizing her, then resenting her when she fails to embody their ideal. She must learn to accept this cycle without bitterness, knowing that it is not personal. The light reveals what others wish to see until they are ready to see what is. In mythic language, she has become the virgin in her deepest sense, not untouched by life, but undivided within herself. Virginity, psychologically understood, means wholeness. She belongs to no one because she belongs entirely to the self. This does not isolate her. It frees her to love without possession. Those who love her must approach with reverence, for they are meeting something larger than personality, the living principle of truth in human form. The mature feminine radiance also reconciles eros and spirit. Her sensuality, once feared as temptation, now becomes a channel of sacred energy. She can touch the world without grasping it, enjoy beauty without clinging to it. Her body, mind, and soul are no longer enemies. This integration restores to love its lost holiness. In her embrace, another feels not seduction but recognition, the sense of being seen by the eternal through mortal eyes. This harmony between matter and spirit transforms her creativity as well. Her words, her gestures, her art, even her silence, become instruments through which the unconscious expresses itself. She no longer creates for achievement, but from necessity, as nature blossoms from inner pressure. Whatever she produces, poem, child, act of kindness, carries the same quality, inevitability. It feels as though life itself has spoken through her. To live in such a state is to be continually emptied and refilled. The self uses her as conduit. Energy flows through her as through a clear stream. If she tries to grasp it, it stagnates. If she lets it move, it renews her. This perpetual circulation keeps her young in spirit, even as the body ages. Time cannot erode essence. Her beauty becomes independent of form, the beauty of being fully alive. Her presence also alters her surroundings. Conflict softens in her company, not because she intervenes, but because dissonance cannot persist in the field of harmony. People leave her feeling more themselves, as if some burden had been lifted. She does not take their pain, she reflects it back transformed. This is the highest function of the feminine, to mirror the unconscious in such a way that it becomes visible and therefore redeemable. In this stage, she no longer seeks meaning, she embodies it. Her life becomes mythic in its ordinariness. Every act, however small, participates in the eternal drama of transformation. When she cooks, she nourishes the archetype of the Great Mother. When she speaks truth, she enacts the oracle. When she forgives, she becomes the healer. The sacred has entered the everyday. Still, she remains human, susceptible to weariness, doubt, and sorrow. Radiance does not protect from suffering. It renders suffering transparent. She feels pain without being consumed by it, fear without paralysis, love without bondage. Her emotions no longer rule her. They pass through her like weather across a tranquil sea. This serenity is not detachment, but mastery, the alignment of emotion with meaning. Those who encounter such a soul often mistake her composure for absence of struggle. In truth, her peace is the fruit of countless inner battles fought in silence. She has wept until the tears turned into vision. She has doubted until doubt itself became faith. The radiance others perceive is the distilled essence of all she has endured. It shines precisely because it has passed through darkness. The world needs such beings more than it knows. In an age intoxicated with speed and spectacle, they remind humanity of stillness. Their existence reawakens the sense of sacred proportion. They are living symbols of order amid chaos, of eternity amid flux. Wherever they appear, even briefly, Something in the collective psyche remembers what it has forgotten, that being is more fundamental than doing, that truth does not shout, that love is not possession but presence. To sustain this level of consciousness requires continuous humility before the mystery. She knows she is a vessel, not a source. Each day she must renew her alignment through prayer, reflection, or silent communion with nature. The light must be tended like a flame, though inexhaustible in essence, it depends on her devotion in form. When fatigue or pride dims it, she returns to solitude, to silence, to the hearth of the self, and the radiance restores itself without effort. In time, she ceases to distinguish between the personal and the impersonal. Her life is both uniquely her own and yet entirely universal. She speaks with the authority of experience, but without the arrogance of ownership. She knows that wisdom belongs to no one. It is borrowed for a while, then passed on. The true bearer of light never clings to it. She becomes its servant. And thus, the sixth and final sign of the rare feminine light is this: her mere existence awakens others. She does not convert, persuade, or demand. She simply is. Through her, the invisible becomes visible, the divine enters the ordinary, and those who come near her glimpse the possibility of their own wholeness. The radiance does not proclaim, "Look at me," but whispers, "Look within." Such a woman may pass unnoticed by history, yet she alters its course. Her influence cannot be measured, for it acts in the unseen dimensions of the psyche. Where she walks, something heals. Where she dwells, something begins to grow. Her life is her message, and her message is silent. That truth once lived requires no defense. The world may never recognize her by name, but the self knows its own. Through her, it speaks to the world. Epilogue, the law of inner radiance. There comes a time when the soul, having wandered through its labyrinth of suffering, love, solitude, and surrender, stands still, and in that stillness, it understands. It sees that everything it sought to escape was in truth its initiation, and that every loss, every trial, was a means through which the self revealed its hidden order. The rare feminine light is born in this recognition. It is not the reward for virtue, nor the ornament of temperament. It is the flowering of consciousness when all illusions of separateness have been burned away. Throughout her journey, the woman of light has passed through 6 gates: sensitivity, vision, fidelity, suffering, solitude, and radiance. Each gate demanded a renunciation of numbness, of blindness, of conformity, of self-pity, of dependency, of pride. Each gate also bestowed a gift. Her heart learned to feel without fear. Her sight learned to perceive truth. Her will learned to serve the self. Her pain became wisdom. Her solitude became sanctuary. And her being became blessing. Together, these form the rhythm of her destiny, the living law of inner radiance. This law cannot be taught, only lived. It says, "What is not made conscious will govern you in secret. What you resist will shape your fate. What you embrace will transform you." The woman who lives by this law no longer asks life for comfort or certainty. She asks only for truth. For she has learned that truth, however bitter at first taste, turns sweet in the heart that endures it. The light she carries now is quiet, steady, without urgency. It does not depend on recognition, nor does it dim when misunderstood. It exists by its own necessity, as the flame exists for burning, as the rose exists for blooming. She has ceased to measure her worth by effect or by praise. She lives as the self lives, without justification, without haste, obeying only the inward command to be. To the outer eye, her life may appear ordinary. She may dwell in small rooms, perform simple tasks, live unnoticed. Yet those who come near her feel something sacred, a calm that does not come from indifference, a strength that does not come from defense. They may not call it holiness, but their hearts remember. The divine, when embodied, never announces itself. It reveals itself through atmosphere. Such a woman has become a center of gravity in a world that has lost its center. Her presence restores proportion. She does not preach against chaos. She renders it unnecessary by her order. Where she stands, conflict loses its drama, anxiety its fever, ambition its noise. The unconscious, meeting its reflection in her consciousness, settles. The balance of the psyche reasserts itself, yet she remains human. She still feels the fatigue of matter, the fragility of emotion, the passage of time, but these no longer disturb her essence. She has accepted transience as the garment of eternity. Her faith is not in permanence, but in transformation. She knows that what dies returns in new form, that what ends gives birth to beginning. In this understanding, she finds peace, not by denying death, but by including it. When I speak of her light, I do not mean an aura or a miracle. I mean the simple radiance of one who has become real. Realness is the soul's most convincing miracle. It cannot be imitated, for it arises only when the mask is dropped, when the persona is reconciled with the shadow, when the ego bows before the self. In her, the opposites are no longer enemies, but partners in creation. This reconciliation has consequences far beyond the individual. The woman who becomes whole becomes an agent of balance for the collective. Through her, the masculine and feminine within humanity begin to heal their ancient division. Her empathy softens the hardness of reason. Her clarity refines the chaos of emotion. Without proclaiming doctrine, she restores harmony to the world simply by living according to her nature. But she must remain faithful to the law that gave her birth. Every betrayal of her essence darkens the flame. Every compromise with falseness clouds the mirror. The world will tempt her endlessly to please, to prove, to shine for applause rather than illumination. She must remember that her light is not hers. It belongs to life itself. It is given for the sake of others, yet cannot be sustained without fidelity to the self. When she forgets this, the symptoms are immediate: restlessness, confusion, fatigue of the heart. These are signals, not failures. The self withdraws its radiance until obedience returns. Then, as gently as before, the inner sun rises again, and she resumes her quiet orbit around the unseen center. The law of inner radiance is merciful but exact. The light shines only through truth. At times, she may wonder whether all this has meaning beyond her own small life. Yet the self does not measure significance by scale. A single consciousness brought into harmony counterbalances a multitude in disarray. The psyche, like the cosmos, obeys the principle of resonance. One clear note sustains the entire chord. Thus, her individual transformation contributes to the healing of the collective soul. When her days draw toward their close, she will not speak of achievements or regrets. She will speak of understanding. She will say that love was never what she imagined it to be. It was larger, more demanding, more merciful. She will say that pain was not cruelty but initiation, that solitude was not punishment but privilege, that truth was not a sword but a mirror. And she will know that her light, though invisible to many, has entered eternity as part of the world's ongoing creation. The rare feminine light does not end with her. Wherever consciousness awakens to its own depth, the same radiance appears in new form. It may shine in a child who questions everything, in an elder whose silence soothes all, in a stranger whose gaze recalls forgotten peace. The self multiplies its embodiments endlessly, for it is one in essence and infinite in expression. She has merely remembered what was always true, that the divine seeks to know itself through human hearts. And so the story completes itself where it began, with a woman who feels everything. Her feeling, once her burden, has become her wisdom. Her sensitivity, once her wound, has become her strength. She no longer fears her depth, for she has learned to breathe there. The light she carries now is not fragile, it is eternal. It shines not from effort but from being, not from conquest but from surrender. The law of inner radiance is simple. What is lived in truth becomes light. Every act of awareness expands the circumference of the soul. Every honest emotion, however painful, releases energy for creation. Every moment of authenticity contributes to the great work of transformation by which the world evolves toward consciousness. The woman who knows this law no longer asks for guidance. She is the guidance. Her life has become the symbol through which the invisible teaches the visible. When others ask her, "What is your secret?" she smiles. There is none. She has simply stopped pretending. She has ceased to flee from herself, ceased to call fear, prudence, and conformity peace. She has allowed the soul to live its own life through her. That is all. In this simplicity lies the culmination of her path. Having traversed the 6 signs, She no longer seeks mastery, for she understands that mastery belongs to life alone. She lives, breathes, gives, and rests as the tides obey the moon. Her heart has become the hearth of the self, and from that center her light moves outward, touching lives unseen, guiding hearts unknown. When I contemplate such a being, I see not perfection but completion. She is not above humanity, she is deeply within it. Her tears are still salt, her laughter still human, but through her humanness, eternity gleams. She stands as reminder that the divine did not retreat into heaven, it entered matter, entered feeling, entered woman. And so I end with this: guard your light, not with fear, but with reverence. Do not waste it in false battles or squander it in proving. Let it guide you inward, where the self awaits with the patience of the stars. Obey that inner rhythm, and you will discover what she discovered, that radiance is not achieved, but remembered. The woman who carries a rare feminine light does not shine for admiration. She shines because truth, once awakened, cannot be hidden. And through her, the world remembers that even in its darkest hour, the soul still glows with eternal fire.